The Necromorphs from the Dead Space series of games are some of the coolest video game enemies of all time, and they have some really interesting and thought-provoking lore behind them. From the physical forms they take, to the process of their creation with the markers and the contagion. Join me in exploring the species deeper with this 1-hour compilation of all my Necromorph biology videos combined together to give a detailed explanation of the most iconic types and variants. I have added chapters and titles to help you keep track of which type we are focusing on. Thank you and enjoy the video. Necromorphs are the result of exposure to the mysterious extraterrestrial monoliths known as the markers. They take the form of corpses that have been reanimated and reshaped into horrific new forms by a recombinant infection derived from a genetic code etched into and transmitted by the markers. The resulting creatures are extremely aggressive and will attack any uninfected organism on sight. The sole purpose of almost all necromorph forms is to acquire more bodies in order to convert them and spread the infection. They are even worshipped by some and believed by them to be the heralds of humanity's ascension. The necromorphs are controlled via the markers by a group of entities known as the Brethren Moons. All necromorphs are extremely hardy and capable of surviving in lethal environments such as the vacuum of space. This implies a total lack of respiration or reliance upon vascular activity, which explains the necromorph's resistance to wounds that would cause massive blood loss. The transformation process will take unneeded musculature, organs and bone and repurpose them into weapons like scythes, spikes, claws and teeth. Many necromorphs feature yellow luminescent tumour-like growths or pustules. These sacs explode violently when ruptured. It is possible that these organs serve as sources of energy for the necromorph. There is a sub-breed of the infection known as enhanced necromorphs. While their physical shapes are identical to the normal variants, enhanced necromorphs are a slimy black colour with yellow glowing eyes. This dark coloration will often make them much harder to spot, and they can take more damage than the regular types. Necromorphs can take on many different forms. Some types are made from a single body, and others are made from multiple bodies. The type of necromorph created largely depends on location and circumstance. For example, slashers are made from a single adult human, lurkers are usually created from infant organ banks used for medical transplants, but in other cases have also been made from dogs. So not only can a single species be used to create multiple necromorph types, but single types can also be created from multiple species. This shows that the mutations are not created at random, but actually made to fit a predetermined arrangement. Guardians are created from hosts who have been affixed to surfaces, and stalkers are believed to be created from twins. Some necromorphs are composed of more than one human, such as brutes, tripods and hiveminds, which is another indication that a form of intelligence is at work allocating biomass for specific use. In certain cases, necromorphs have been created via the insertion of necromorph tissue into the brain of a living host. This can result in exceptionally powerful necromorphs capable of regenerating severed appendages in a matter of seconds. The most well-known necromorph of this type was the Hunter, an experiment of the crazed unitologist Dr. Chalice Mercer. On the planet Tau Volantis, numerous necromorphs created from the native creatures were encountered, meaning any living organism in the universe can be infected, no matter the species. The creation of a necromorph first begins with the markers. These structures broadcast a highly concentrated electromagnetic signal that alters any dead tissue in range on a cellular level, converting it into necromorph tissue and reanimating the corpse of the host organism. Necromorphs are structurally held together by the signal and will degenerate into an organic soup in its absence. This signal also affects the minds of any nearby intelligent life forms, usually manifesting in dementia in individuals with low to average intelligence, and will lead to homicidal and/or suicidal actions, setting the stage for the coming necromorph infection. In individuals possessing above average intelligence, the signal will compel them to attempt to decipher its meaning, which contains a set of blueprints to reverse engineer and replicate the markers, spreading their influence. The infection is also spread directly through the necromorph pathogen. that is, the reanimated cells created by the markers and which compose the necromorphs. Typically, the infection is passed on to new host bodies via specialised necromorphs such as infectors or swarms. As the necromorph pathogen infects only necrotic tissue, living victims who come into contact with it typically do not undergo transformation until death. However, living victims that ingest necromorph tissue in large quantities will undergo a gradual transformation, eventually dying and becoming feeders. Once the host is dead, the recombinant properties of the infection take hold. The process is extraordinarily rapid and violent. Cellular functions go into a self-destructive overdrive, creating new biologically active compounds which are then metabolized by reanimated flesh to fuel further mutations. Bones are broken, put together in new configurations, or reshaped into entirely new forms. All of this takes place within a matter of seconds, and the process generates tremendous amounts of heat. More often than not, the violently spasming corpses become so hot that stagnant blood begins to boil in the veins and arteries, rupturing the skin. Formerly vital organs, such as parts of the digestive system that are no longer needed, are broken down and turned into additional musculature, giving all necromorphs increased physical strength. Although incredibly deadly, necromorphs do have vulnerabilities depending on their specific archetype. Wounds that may kill certain necromorphs may not necessarily kill human beings and vice versa. For example, most human beings can survive having all their arms and legs amputated cleanly, while most necromorphs can survive having their head amputated cleanly, with the reverses being fatal. However, both organisms, as with all organic organisms, will eventually expire after a sufficient volume of blood loss. It is advisable to induce as much blood loss as possible by any means necessary, while shooting at the torso or head are inefficient ways to deprive a necromorph host body of blood. Enough shots will eventually drain the body to the point where it finally dies, but it is much more efficient to sever the extremities such as the arms, legs, and the tails or tentacles if present. The second method to combat a necromorph is incineration. Most necromorphs will be killed if they sustain heavy burns. With the regenerator types, this is the only way to deal with them as they can regrow their limbs. Others can only be damaged by directly attacking the yellow pustules present on some types, such as tentacles, brutes, and the Hivemind, which can be considered weak spots. Countless people have met their end due to not knowing a specific necromorph's vulnerability, so it is important to pay attention and recognise each type's strengths and vulnerabilities. Rather than thinking and functioning individually, the necromorphs are instead controlled by a collective consciousness. An individual necromorph receives its orders from a single necromorph type called a Hivemind. These colossal creatures can be made from thousands of human bodies, or in the case of the Nexus, a single giant alien. The Hivemind necromorph serves as a relay and transfers the marker signal to the individual foot soldier necromorphs, acting as an organic command center. Their telepathic influence is also what holds necromorph tissue together, and without it, the creatures will break down into a primordial mush. The Hiveminds and markers then receive their instructions from the highest necromorph forms, the Brethren Moons, which are massive moon-sized creatures created after nearly every living organism on an inhabited planet has been killed and infected, and then all the biomass integrated together in a convergence event. The Brethren Moons are predatory on a planetary scale, and have spread throughout the universe with but a single goal in mind: consume all organic life. This crusade against biological life has gone on for countless millennia, leaving entire star systems completely devoid of even the most basic microbial life. There exists a religion called the Church of Unitology, which revolves around the markers and believes convergence to be humanity's ascension into the afterlife. Unitologists adamantly believe that the human race was created by the intelligent design of a divine alien agency, and will be reunified after death, in heaven through the power of the markers. The Slasher is the most commonly seen necromorph type. They are created from the reanimated corpse of a human being, and retain most of their basic form, but with a twisted and gruesome appearance. Slashers stand upright and have sharp protrusions of bone, creating scythe-like bladed weapons. These protrude from either the palms of the hands or are connected to new arms which grow out from the shoulders. Their main pair of arms are used for attacking and for balance while moving. They will also sometimes have a smaller set of vestigial arms, either the originals or newly grown ones out of the exposed abdominal area. These are either useless or sometimes used to hold on to prey whilst attacking. During their transformation, they will lose most of their skin from their face and sometimes the entire lower jaw, and will grow mandibles in its place. Slashers are created either by the signal from the markers, which turn people insane, homicidal and suicidal, then transforms the bodies of them and their victims into the creatures, or alternately by an Infector type, which will attack by latching onto either a living human or a corpse and enter its proboscis into them, turning them into a slasher necromorph. The purpose of the slashers are to attack other humans, creating more bodies to be used as biomass for creating even more necromorphs and spreading the infection. As their name suggests, they will attack by slashing with their large blades, which are capable of dismembering their victims. They will also grab hold of them and either stab or bite them. They can move very fast, around human sprinting speed, and will usually rush their victims head on, but can also be stealthy and sneak up behind them, or even play dead and lie in wait until their prey strays too close. They will also move quickly through ventilation shafts to reach inaccessible areas or to ambush prey. There is a stronger variant called the Enhanced Slasher. These have a slightly different appearance with a darker colour and are more resistant to damage. The first one of these was seen when an Infector type necromorph infected the body of the USG Ishimura's captain Benjamin Mathias. Body shots alone are not enough to kill them, and even headshots from firearms or complete decapitation will only do minimal damage. The best tactic is to cut off their limbs with a cutting tool, such as a plasma cutter. This has proven to be the most effective method for defeating them. Slashers have been encountered in all known necromorph outbreaks where humans have been infected, including on the mining ship USG Ishimura, the Sprawl space station, and on the frozen planet Tau Volantis. The Leaper is a necromorph type which possesses superior maneuverability. They are made up of a single human corpse and are the second most common variant after the Slasher. Their front arms are elongated and strengthened to take over as their primary locomotion, while their legs have been entirely repurposed, being fused together with its intestinal tract and reshaped into a long scythe-tipped tail. They will also use this tail to propel themselves great distances and leap onto their victims. They can attack with the bladed tip to impale and slice open human prey. Along their back, their spinal column has been changed into a formation of spines and relocated upwards, allowing their limbs a greater range of motion. The musculature of the upper arm becomes more developed, and the fingers grow bladed claws for climbing and slashing. The hands become dislocated along with the thumbs, which are moved back to create animal-like paws. The position of the Leaper's head has shifted 90 degrees backwards to face forward in a more animalistic pose. The area of the head from the sinus to the cranial area has split open, creating a much larger mouth, and their human teeth have been replaced with a set of mandibles which bear large bony fangs, or on some examples they will grow fingers which serve the same function. In addition to their impressive speed and agility, they are also suited well to zero-G environments, able to leap between surfaces and cut off prey before they can escape. Leapers appear to scout their possible victims by quickly flashing through open vents in an attempt to scare its target and suddenly jump out of nowhere with its high speed and agility. There is another form called the Enhanced Leaper with a darker complexion and glowing eyes. These deal more damage with their attacks and are more durable and harder to kill than the regular form. Leapers are one of the most common necromorph types and have been seen in every known outbreak involving human settlements. The best way to deal with them is sever their arms, which will rob them of the ability to sprint, or cut off the tail, which will make them unable to jump. Decapitation will deal some damage but is otherwise ineffective. Some early concepts for the Leaper portrayed them as having 4 legs and a different looking head, and others with tentacles coming out of them. The Lurker is a necromorph type that is specialised for ranged attacks, and which can do so from surfaces and in 0G. A Lurker necromorph is usually created from a human baby, but can also result from other similar sized organisms. Instead of using the host's existing locomotion, they instead scuttle around on a number of tentacle-looking legs which grow from the underside. These function similar to insect legs, including granting the Lurker the ability to scale vertical surfaces, further aiding them to attack from afar and avoid being approached, as they are still quite small and vulnerable at close range. Coiled within the former pelvic area underneath an articulating flap of skin are 3 long ropey tentacles which unfurl when the Lurker has spotted a victim. These strong and flexible appendages are able to launch barbs at high speed and with impressive accuracy, but can also be used to stab with. The Lurker functions to support the larger necromorphs, and their small frame is treated more like a lump of biomass than an existing template, around which the pathogen recombines it into an offensive form. Backing up this hypothesis is the presence of a canine version of the Lurker, as seen in Dead Space 3, which can be found on board SCAF ships and on the surface of Tau Volantis. These dogs were part of a SCAF expedition project to help look for marker artifacts, so the same necromorph type can be made with different species, a phenomenon also seen with the crawler type, which has both human and Tau Volantian variants. It is hinted at that Lurkers can develop inside the womb of an unsuspecting mother, or from infants growing in external artificial wombs, such as the so-called organ banks on the Ishimura. An enhanced variant of the Lurker exists, which has the same basic body structure as the regular Lurker, but is entirely black and has glowing eyes, and which both deals and is more resistant to damage. To combat the Lurker, it is best to target the 3 tentacles and try to sever them all off, and it's recommended to keep an eye on the walls when doing so, as they are often seen in packs, so more than one may be present at a time. The Infector necromorph is unique in that its sole purpose is to spread the necromorph contagion, thus creating more creatures to spread the infestation. They resemble a cross between a manta ray and a headless bat in appearance, and have a retractable proboscis that it uses to inject the necromorph contagion. They will usually seek out corpses, but can also infect live humans as well. Despite attacking not being their primary purpose, they can use the talons on their wings to slash with, and they can stab with their proboscis. Like most necromorphs, they have an enhanced form which is tougher and has dark skin and flesh. The Infector type is formed from a single human. The wings are formed by a flap of skin from the chest and fused between the host's bent and broken legs. The jaw collapses within the body, and the rest of the head breaks and twists into a proboscis and a set of antennas, with the spine providing support and attachment points for its limbs. The proboscis, which is made from mutated bone, muscle and spinal tissue, is the delivery mechanism for the pure necromorph material used to infect new hosts. This is done by enveloping the host in its wings, extending the proboscis from its cavity, and then stabbing it into the skull to inject a yellow fluid stored in an internal bladder. The transformation occurs instantaneously. The best course of action to take in a situation where both infectors and dead bodies are present is to target the infectors first before the other necromorphs, as if left unchecked you will soon be overrun with enemies. They seem to have a preference for corpses which have existing head wounds, possibly because this spares them having to crack the skulls themselves. The Infector in the morgue goes straight for Captain Matthias's body, with his eye-to-brain needle puncture, over any of the other corpses, and Chalice Mercer is seen to have prepared corpses for them by boring a hole in the centre of their foreheads. These corpses seem to be most noticeable in the crew quarters on the Ishimura. Infectors typically produce slashers unless the corpse being infected was equipped with a stasis module, such as a marine, in which case the corpse will mutate into a twitcher, a slasher variant where during their infection and transformation, the module becomes fused with the body, and its effects are strangely reversed with terrifying results. It is implied that the Infector is also capable of creating the other single body types of Necromorphs in the games, although only the creation of slashers and twitchers are actually witnessed in-game. A difference between their appearance in the video games and the animated movie is that their game appearance usually crawls on surfaces, but in the movie they fly, which they don't do much of in the games. The Puker is a necromorph type encountered during the events of Dead Space 2 and later in Dead Space 3. As suggested by their name, they will attack by projectile vomiting a highly corrosive bile at their victims. They have, at least by necromorph standards, retained much of their former human form and have kept a human-like silhouette. Although the creature's constant messy expulsion of caustic fluids has melted away its facial features, leaving behind hollow eye sockets and freezing its face in a hollow blank stare, as well as the skin and muscle tissue of the torso, revealing its organs, including the lungs, which now appear yellowish in colour, being converted to store a quantity of bile. What remains of the flesh hangs loosely around its frame. The original legs have entwined, creating a single one, with a clump of intestines, muscle and necrotic flesh having grown downwards to form an additional leg. And its fingers have merged into 3 long disfigured claws on each hand, which it will slash with when approached too closely. The Puker has 4 forms of attack. First, it shoots a ball of corrosive bile over a long distance which burns victims and corrodes armour, preventing those who are hit by it from running. The Puker's second attack is a projected stream of bile at medium to close range. The third is a melee attack using its claws, and the fourth is a grapple attack in which the Puker grabs the victim before vomiting on their neck and face. If the player is at low enough health, the Puker will remove their helmet and vomit on their face, melting away the skin and causing the substance to be ingested. The type also sports a unique defense mechanism in which their severed appendages spurt corrosive fluid upon dismemberment. A sickening gurgling and choking sound forewarns one of an incoming Puker. This sound rises into a shriek as it prepares to spew acid at foes. Like most necromorphs, there is an enhanced Puker with a dark colour and glowing eyes. This variant is stronger than the normal common one and more difficult to kill. It is advised to engage the Puker from a distance and to always stay on the move while doing so, as to avoid their ranged attacks. If you have no other choice than to attack up close, it is advised that you use stasis on it in order to stunt its reflexes, otherwise you run the risk of falling victim to a grab attack. The Divider is a tall, thin necromorph with the ability to break apart into smaller creatures. The main section of this necromorph is a human head with tendrils coming from the neck, which acts as the lead unit, and the arms and legs are each separate creatures, and they all then combine together with a torso section to create the Divider. The major organs of the body have all fallen out or been assimilated, along with most of the skin tissue. The limbs have been elongated and become very slender, while the fingers have fused together into elongated claws. Most of the muscle has fallen off, with just enough left to hold the necromorph together. Because the major organs are missing, the abdomen is exposed, creating a large hole in the torso. Despite this, the Divider is an audibly loud creature, emitting deep whale-like bellows when idle and high-pitched shrieks when agitated. The Dividers seen on the Ishimura are composed of high-ranking officers, judging by the tattered remains of the uniforms still present. The ones met aboard Titan Station are created from scientists who were wearing white lab coats. When together, the Divider uses one of its tendrils as a long tongue to strangle its victims, and also uses its arms to slash with. If the Divider takes sufficient damage, it will collapse on the ground, and the head, arms and legs will separate, becoming independent creatures known as components or Divider spawn. The Divider subsections are very fast and will continue to attack. The arms and legs will crawl around and leap onto different surfaces and use their tendrils to whip at their enemy. The head will attempt to suffocate the victim by latching onto their neck, then use its appendages to cut off the head and hijack the body, taking control of the host's nervous system by attaching itself to the spine. A lone head of a divider with no body or limbs is known as a creeper. Creepers are capable of decapitating dead bodies and burrowing into the neck stump to create shamblers. If the body has a firearm, the shambler can shoot the weapon at enemies. If the shambler body is sufficiently damaged, it will rip the creeper head off and throw it at the enemy, where it will attempt to strangle, decapitate and hijack them. Dividers are always heard shortly before they are encountered. They can emit a deep loud bellow or will creak and crunch like dry wood, and using stasis on it to freeze the individual components will make them easier to hit. The Brute is a large necromorph that is composed of multiple corpses. More reminiscent of an animal than a human, they are the largest of the standard necromorph types. The Brute's movements and body posture resemble those of a gorilla, as they also rely on their massive fists for locomotion. They display extreme physical strength and are almost entirely encased in an armoured, spiked exoskeleton made from bone and calcified skin. Its posterior is relatively unarmoured, and from it sprouts a pair of vestigial arms used for support if one of the main arms is cut off. Brutes will attempt to charge and pummel prey with their large muscular arms and hardened foreheads. These devastating attacks can easily knock a human off their feet. There are, however, specific weak spots just before the shoulder joints and towards the back along both rear legs. They are easily identified by their comparatively bright yellow coloration. When attacked on these weak spots, the Brute will contract within its armoured plates to protect itself. This can be used as an advantage as the back of the creature is still exposed, and when combined with stasis, serious damage can be done before it recovers. If the Brute is rendered immobile and can no longer attack normally, the torso contains a sac where they produce highly explosive organic material made from a similar material as the yellow weak spots. The Brute will then shoot these projectiles as a last resort. Despite its heavy armour, the Brute is surprisingly quick for its size and can even approach its prey silently and take them by surprise. Like many necromorphs, the Brute has an enhanced form, which is even stronger, requiring more ammunition to take down. Enhanced Brutes, like every other enhanced necromorph variant, are darker in their appearance with glowing eyes. Despite being stronger than their standard Brute counterparts, they can still be put down with the right choice of weaponry and planning. A flamethrower is especially effective. It is believed that the first Brute was created by the Earth government using 3 human corpses and the genetic code of necromorphs. Craig Markoff named the creature Krax after one of the corpses used to make it, and used it to kill Michael Altman. The chief security officer of the USG Kellyan, Zach Hammond, was killed by a Brute when it ambushed him from behind on the USM Valor. Ironically, it was Hammond who first advised Isaac Clarke on how to fight a Brute. The Hivemind was a massive necromorph variant created by Marker 3A on Aegis 7. It was unwittingly created by the Sovereign Colonies as a result of military testing of the experimental Marker 3A on Aegis 7 in the 2290s, and acted as a nexus between the Marker and the rest of the necromorphs. The Marker maintained its connection to the Hivemind through a signal amplifying pedestal, which it used to relay orders to the massive creature. The SCAF eventually aborted any further experimentation with the Marker, sealing off Aegis 7 and abandoning the artifact somewhere above the Hivemind's resting place beneath the surface, where it remained for the next 200 years. The Hivemind resembled an enormous worm with tentacles along its length. Its full size was never truly shown, as an unknown portion of the creature was hidden inside the crater, but it appeared to have a defined head and thorax. It is unknown how many bodies were used to create the Hivemind. The creature had a very fleshy appearance on its lower thorax, almost resembling human skin with muscle tissue covering certain areas, and its tentacles appeared to grow from well below this thorax area. The head's most prominent feature was a massive circular mouth consisting of 2 sets of jaws, each with their own rows of teeth. The Hivemind was able to spit acidic pods from its central mouth. Around the mouth there were 5 quote-unquote eyes made from yellow explosive fluid. The thorax featured a frontal cavity which sheltered 5 more yellow sacs that served as the Necromorph's vital organs, with a rib cage serving as protection for them. The back of the creature featured several branched antenna-like appendages. The purpose of these was unknown, but it is possible that they served as antennas helping in broadcasting the marker signal to other beings, as well as forwarding commands to the other Necromorphs. The Hivemind acted as an organic command centre for the Aegis 7 Necromorph outbreak, as Marker 3A referred to it as a nexus between itself and the Necromorphs. The connection between the Hivemind and the marker was strengthened by the marker's pedestal, which amplified its signal and allowed it to relay orders to the creature. When the marker was removed from the pedestal, the connection was severed and the marker could no longer coordinate with the Hivemind. A nexus organism is the name given to necromorphs that are able to broadcast the signal from the markers and brethren moons to the smaller necromorph variants. Another of this type was the nexus seen on Tau Volantis, and which served the same purpose of the Aegis 7 version, except instead of being made from the combined biomass of thousands of humans, the nexus was made from a single gigantic Tau Volantian, as the alien species had an indeterminate growth, meaning they would continue to grow throughout their entire lifespan without stopping. The boss from the mobile game is thought to be an immature Hivemind, and both the Ubermorph and some slashers which have the same 5-eye layout are speculated to also be some sort of progenitors of the Hivemind type. Perhaps as a new Hivemind begins to form, one of these would act as the dominant necromorph to which others would then assimilate into. The Hivemind will use its tentacles to slam down onto its enemies and will also use them to grab with so it can devour them. It can also spit out explosive sacs and smaller necromorph forms. 200 years after the Sovereign colonies abandoned Aegis 7, the Concordance Extraction Corporation mining company discovered the planet and found out that it was a gold mine of resources. Regardless of the restrictions for travelling to the Aegis system due to the classified information regarding the first Aegis 7 incident, the CEC decided to construct an illegal mining colony on the planet to begin harvesting it. Sometime before the arrival of the USG Ishimura, a small team of miners found the marker. Immediately upon its discovery, it began the first phase of the second Necromorph outbreak by slowly driving the members of the mining colony insane. As the Ishimura arrived at the planet, the colony began the extraction of a large portion of the planet. As the piece of the planet was moved away, the Hivemind was exposed to the surface. Not too long after the planet crack, the marker's influence finally reached its final potency, turning the dead into necromorphs to set loose upon the colony. As all hell broke loose, the Hivemind reawoke from its slumber with new pawns to command and began destroying anything that came close to its nest or tried to escape. As the colony was overrun, the Ishimura followed as both the marker and the infection were brought on board the vessel. In a matter of hours, both the colony and ship were lost. Dr. Kine recovered footage of the Hivemind during the outbreak, and the crazed Dr. Mercer came to learn of its existence and turned to worshipping it as a divine entity. The Hivemind appeared to be the controlling intelligence of the necromorphs in the Aegis 7 system. With the absence of Marker 3A's creators preventing convergence from beginning, the marker instead sought to imprint its codes in any suitable individual it could find. It eventually targeted Dr. Kine, who had begun sabotaging the Ishimura systems in an attempt to crash it into the planet. Before he could complete this plan, the marker intervened with a hallucination of the Doctor's deceased wife, Amelia. At this point, Kine entered a delusional state and was manipulated by Amelia into returning the marker to its pedestal as it promised to calm the Hivemind. Unaware of the artifact's true intentions of merging with his mind, after the USG Kellion arrived at the Ishimura, the marker seemingly encouraged Kine to request the assistance of one of the Kellion's crew, a CEC engineer named Isaac Clarke. Isaac decided to help Kyne with returning the marker, but Kendra Daniels, a member of the repair team, revealed herself to be an undercover agent tasked to contain the marker, and betrayed Isaac and killed Kyne before attempting to flee with the artifact. However, the marker's influence over Isaac made him pull Kendra's shuttle back to the Ishimura, forcing her to flee in an escape pod that landed somewhere on the planet. Isaac successfully regained both the shuttle and the marker and landed on the colony, making his way to the pedestal site where the marker had launched its first strikes that drove the colony insane. As Isaac returned to the marker to its pedestal, it re-established its connection to the Hivemind and ordered it to stand down while it released a massive pulse, imprinting its codes into Isaac and Elizabeth Cross's minds. However, this wave of energy also disabled the gravity tethers keeping the chunk of the planet in orbit in place. With the impending doom on the way, Isaac headed back to the shuttle but was stopped by Kendra, who once again stole the marker. This event caused the Hivemind to become even more aggressive, attempting to slam the colony's structure down in an attempt to retrieve the marker. As Kendra and Isaac reached the shuttle pad, the Hivemind ambushed them, killing Kendra and beginning the final fight with Isaac. Isaac defeated the Hivemind and it slid back into the massive crater below. As Isaac escaped from the chaos, what was left of the Necromorph was disintegrated when the chunk of the planet fell down. Over 2 million years ago, the ocean planet Tau Volantis was home to an alien species with an advanced civilization. Following millions of years of existence on their home planet, they would discover a black marker. Just like humans would do eons later, the aliens built replicas of it, believing it to be a source of unlimited energy, leading to a necromorph outbreak on Tau Volantis. At least some faction of the species was aware of the danger and constructed a massive machine which instantly froze the planet. This act would render themselves extinct, but it would save countless other worlds from falling victim to the necromorphs and the markers. Unable to assimilate the remaining biosphere, the moon was left incomplete and inert. The machine failed to destroy the moon, however, allowing it to project its signal through the other markers still spread throughout the galaxy, eventually finding a suitable new species in humanity. Long before the black marker landed on the planet, Tau Volantis was an aquatic world with vast oceans covering the surface. Aside from the caverns and cities erected by the planet's former inhabitants, enormous gorges and trenches ran along the ocean bed, which now serves as tall cliffs and mountains. Once the aliens activated their machine, the whole planet was flash frozen, plunging it into an endless snowstorm and rendering the natives extinct. 2 million years later, in 2311, a human faction known as the Sovereign Colonies discovered that the signal being perpetuated by their own markers came from the lost planet itself. Now an icy backwater planet, the environment of Tau Volantis was harsh and visited frequently by snowstorms. When the expedition unearthed the corpses of the aliens changed by the necromorph organism, it wasn't long before the expedition itself succumbed to the influence of the markers. The Sovereign Colonies Council authorised Scenario 5 and ordered the purge of all parties involved with the expedition and destruction and cover-up of its findings in a move to prevent the necromorph contagion from reaching the Earth and its colonies. 200 years later, in 2514, fragmented marker research left behind by the Sovereign Colonies led data archaeologist Damara Carver to the discovery of the Forgotten Planet. Ellie Langford, survivor of the Sprawl infestation, and Captain Robert Norton of EarthGov, joined by Isaac Clarke, organised an expedition to Tau Volantis in the effort to destroy the source of the necromorphs. Following this news, a militarised section of the Church of Unitology led by Jacob Danik aimed to stop them reaching the source and destroying all chances of true convergence. The planet was assumed to be the home world of the necromorphs, but was discovered to be another planet which fell victim to the markers. The Unitologists were able to turn off the machine and restart the convergence, but the newly formed moon was destroyed by Isaac Clarke and John Carver. The Tau Volantians themselves are aquatic in nature with gills and collapsible fins, which allowed Dr. Serrano to deduce that the planet had at one point not been covered in ice, but a vast ocean. They were hexapods with one primary pair of clawed forelimbs and a smaller pair protruding from underneath the torso, and a pair of backwards facing hind limbs. They had flat, elongated skulls with various grooves and bony growths resembling something of a crest. Living underwater, their size wasn't limited by the effects of gravity, and they had an indeterminate growth, with some measuring around 8 feet tall to others reaching hundreds of feet tall. They were highly advanced both technologically and socially, with their own cities, cultures and language. There was also evidence to suggest their empire was widespread, spanning many star systems, and the species were thought to number in the trillions before falling to the markers. A preserved Tau Volantian body was discovered preserved inside the ice by the Sovereign Colony's armed forces. The specimen was named Rosetta. After studying Rosetta, Dr. Earl Serrano discovered the truth and tried to complete the alien's unfinished work. They realised that the alien machine could only be interfaced with using the unaltered DNA of the aliens themselves. This made Rosetta, frozen solid and perfectly preserved, vital to the project of creating a codex. When Scenario 5 was implemented, Rosetta's body was sliced into a number of cross-sectional slabs and scattered across different areas of the research complex in an attempt to hide her. A number of necromorph variants of the alien species exist. The standard type is around 2 meters tall and retains its basic host body structure, but with a more skeletal appearance. Having lost nearly all of the flesh from its face and body, the creature's arms and digits have rotted down to the bone, producing scythe-like claws, and what is left of their skin is mottled and rotten. The torso section has been split open, allowing the ejection of their recombinated offspring at their prey. These infant aliens are a variant of the crawler necromorph type, seen before as infected human infants. The alien necromorphs fairly closely resemble brutes in overall size, appearance and behaviour, and are possibly the brute equivalent when made from the extinct natives. Along with the smaller necromorph variants, the oldest and biggest of the natives were reformed into various Hivemind forms, similar to the one encountered on Aegis 7, capable of redirecting the marker signal and posing as mobile command centres, enhancing the lesser necromorph's intelligence. Among the surviving specimens is the one that the Sovereign Colony's research teams would name the Nexus. It has a stomach, eyes and nests inside of it. These are usually filled with enhanced feeders that have been eating at their insides to make themselves stronger. The Brethren Moons, also referred to as the Brother Moons or Blood Moons, are a race of gigantic necrotic alien life forms and are the originators of the markers, the marker signal and the necromorph monsters. They are believed to be the final stage in the necromorph life cycle. Due to their agenda, the Brethren Moons are the central antagonists of the Dead Space franchise. The moons are literal moon-sized creatures, with the surface acting as a protective shell, concealing a mass of tentacles which reach thousands of miles in length. Within the centre of the creature is the main head. This head has 5 colossal yellow eyes, resembling those of the Hivemind and the Ubermorph. Hanging from the entrance of the mouth is a mass of tissue consisting of eyes, tentacles, a fang-lined slit and a circular sucking mouth. This smaller head is capable of interacting with the smaller objects that are about to be ingested by breaking the raw materials down and engaging any stubborn living prey. The moons are sentient organisms possessing a level of consciousness and intellect practically unimaginable to human beings. They communicate via a form of telepathic signal and are also capable of causing hallucinations by using their telepathic abilities. During the hallucinations where they spoke to Isaac and Carver through their prophet, the cult leader, they displayed a kind of hive mind mentality by referring to themselves in the plural. The moons appeared to regard themselves as immortal, omnipotent and divine by referring to themselves collectively as a god. The process of a new moon's creation begins with the moons making black markers, which travel through space inside asteroids before impacting a suitable host world. In the case of Earth, the black marker was carried inside the asteroid that struck the Yucatan Peninsula around 65 million years ago. After a host world has been reached, the marker will fall dormant, reactivating only once the dominant life form of the planet has achieved a certain level of technological advancement. That is, once they've exhausted their home world's natural resources and need to venture into space to find more. The marker then announces itself by broadcasting an electromagnetic signal, making it appear to the prey species to be a limitless source of energy. This signal will drive intelligent species to create marker copies that are then inevitably distributed throughout their territory. However, it has another function which remains dormant for a brief period after its discovery. It can alter the necrotic tissue of dead organisms at the molecular level, causing corpses to reanimate and become necromorphs, relentlessly hostile, biorecombinant creatures which then spread across the surface of the affected planet like a disease. Due to the presence of markers in nearly every major population centre, containment becomes all but impossible. After necromorph infestation has claimed the majority of a planet's population, the accumulated markers initiate a convergence event, the birth of a brethren moon. Once the convergent event begins, the black marker will rise and draw all necromorphs and any other dead tissue along with quantities of the planet's crust towards itself, where they all combine with the marker to form into the biological core of a new brother moon. The creature is fully awakened when the last of the species used to create it has been absorbed, along with the planet's entire biosphere. It is currently unknown what happens to the moon once it absorbs all life upon its birth world, but it is believed that the newborn moon will travel to the nearest source of organic life to continue feeding. Earl Serrano speculated that all life between the origin of the Brethren moons and humanity's home system has been extinguished by the moons, mixing the genetic material of countless species across the universe into their uniform biomass. This proposed an uncommon answer to the Fermi paradox. Humanity never had the opportunity to contact aliens, not because they didn't exist, but because a massive and lethally invasive hyper-predator absorbed most, if not all, of the organic life within our galaxy, leaving much of it in a state of dead space. Serrano also discovered that the moons formed a network that spanned the galaxy, which they used to communicate as the marker's influence affected other sentient species, leading them to build more markers, continuing to expand the network. 2 million years ago, on an alien planet called Tau Volantis, a convergent event and the creation of a new moon were interrupted when the aliens that it attempted to assimilate built a machine that flash froze their entire planet, halting the event in its tracks, but also wiping out the Tau Volantians in the process. Although they would become extinct, they essentially paused the necromorph convergence in order to save other worlds from meeting the same fate. The machine was meant to destroy the moon by crashing it into the planet's surface, but this part failed to occur. In response, the new moon began using other markers to broadcast a distress signal across the galaxy, saying "make us whole" and "turn it off," in the hopes of luring new organic beings to Tau Volantis so they could unwittingly disable the machine, allowing the convergence to complete and resuming the moon's cycle of extinction. The moon's plan was successful as it managed to lure the humans to Tau Volantis and manipulated them into shutting down the machine. But Isaac Clarke and John Carver defeated the moon and it was sent crashing down to the surface. Isaac and Carver reached the CMS Terra Nova and were subjected to the painful visions of the brother moons. Isaac, suspecting that they were being manipulated into taking the ship back to Earth so the moons could follow them there, decided to destroy the shock point drive and trap them at Tau Volantis forever. Carver, who was determined to recover the drive and return to Earth, threatened Isaac upon seeing his growing paranoia. The pair fought the cult leader after a tense hallucinatory confrontation and discovered upon his defeat that the moon knew where Earth was and had turned Carver and Isaac against each other to prevent them from warning Earth in time. Knowing that they had little time, Isaac and Carver installed the salvage shockpoint drive on the Terra Nova and overloaded the ancient reactor on the ship to power it up. Arriving at Earth, Isaac and Carver tried to contact the authorities to relay their warning. After several tries, a transmission broke through, the gurgles and snarls of many necromorphs. The duo were shocked to see the Brethren moons rising from the other side of the Earth. Another moon then suddenly appeared in front of the Terra Nova, leaving Earth's and all mankind's fate unclear. The markers are enigmatic double helix-shaped obelisks of extraterrestrial origin. Their purpose is to reproduce through intelligent civilizations and create necromorphs until a convergence event is triggered, forming a Brethren moon. Two types of markers are known to exist: black markers and red markers. Black markers originate from extraplanetary sources, travelling through space until they impact a suitable planet which harbours life. After planetfall, the black marker will emit a DNA-altering electromagnetic signal which forces the most intelligent species present to evolve into sentient beings. Once the beings reach a certain point technologically, the black marker will reveal itself by emitting its signal, which will appear to be a source of unlimited energy. It will influence them into creating copies of itself and spread them throughout their territory. These artificial copies are the red markers. Once a red marker has been constructed, it will begin to influence the minds of those who made it, making them crazy and violent and turning the dead into necromorphs. In the case of humans, they began to worship the markers as a sign of God and began a religion called unitology. The marker's signal causes depression and a form of dementia in most living beings it comes into contact with. It is believed that the ultimate source of this signal is the Brethren moons, with the markers merely rebroadcasting it. Through this signal, the markers are able to communicate with each other across incredible distances, as it was observed that the red markers on Aegis 7, Aspera and Kremar were able to coordinate and act as one despite being separated by several star systems. The intensity of the signal depends on the state of the marker, which displays a sentient ability to control what it transmits and create different effects. However, it is unknown if the artifact itself is sentient or if the intelligence demonstrated is the result of the Brethren moons speaking through it. When a marker goes through a state change, the signal will manifest a powerful EMP blast. Additionally, it can be strengthened by the presence of certain catalysts. For example, marker 2A was able to sharpen its signal after coming into contact with Istvan Sato, whose brain was deemed highly compatible, while marker 3A was able to strengthen its pulses and relay orders to the Aegis 7 Hivemind through an amplifying pedestal. In most of those affected, the marker's dementia manifests itself in the form of hallucinations that drive the victim into a state of paranoia and compel them to carry out homicidal or suicidal actions to prepare for the coming necromorph infection. To certain individuals whose DNA is deemed more compatible with the marker signal, such as in the case of Istvan Sato and Isaac Clarke, the dementia instead reveals codes and blueprints for the creation of new markers, and its hallucinations are more sophisticated, guiding these individuals to perform more complex tasks to further the marker's agenda. The implantation of a marker's codes in the minds of suitable hosts is considered a priority to ensure that new markers are constructed and able to bring about a convergence event. Some individuals would receive different types of knowledge instead of marker blueprints, like Chalice Mercer, whose contact with the signal gave him knowledge which he used to perform his experiments, and would eventually lead to the creation of the Hunter. Once enough corpses have been created around the marker's area of influence, the signal begins its next stage, which is the Necromorph contagion. This contagion's genetic code is written in an alien language on the markers themselves. The signal reanimates dead bodies, which are then twisted into nightmarish monstrous creatures that are built for the purpose of killing and infecting other living organisms. This infection occurs not only with the black marker, but also where the duplicate markers have spread. The resulting creatures are structurally sustained by the marker's carrier wave, and all of the necromorphs will fall into an inanimate sludge should the marker be destroyed and the signal stop being transmitted. While the markers do not directly control the actions of the Necromorphs, which behave as little more than animals with a drive to gather biomass, they can seemingly send out general commands to the creatures through their pulses. During large-scale outbreaks, the Necromorphs are controlled telepathically by a form known as a Nexus organism or Hivemind, which acts as a conduit for the marker signal, serving as the artifact's second-in-command and answering directly to it. Additionally, the signal creates a dead space around the marker that keeps the Necromorphs from approaching it. This ensures that the infection does not grow over it and allows the marker to protect individuals of interest to its plans by drawing them to its base. When the Necromorphs become numerous enough, they gather around the marker as it prepares for the ultimate state of convergence. During this event, the marker begins to pull every single Necromorph in towards itself along with the planet's biosphere, merging all the biomass and planetary fragments together with the original marker, creating a new brother moon. The moon then feeds off the remaining life on the planet. When it is done, it joins its kin in a chain network signal. Convergence events have happened many times to countless other civilizations throughout space, and each brother moon represents a planet and species that has fallen victim to the markers. Around 2 million years ago, another black marker was found by the alien inhabitants of an aquatic planet known as Tal Volantis, who harvested its energy and created copies. These markers then released the Necromorph contagion among the species, eventually activating a convergence event. Just before the event, the remaining living aliens realised what was happening and built a machine that would freeze their entire planet and the moon with it, halting the convergence. This would in turn wipe out the Tal Volantians, but they would save countless other worlds from falling victim to the Necromorphs like they did. Since the event, the moon had been frozen along with Tal Volantis but was still alive, and called out via the other markers out there to make it whole and turn it off, trying to lure another species to Tal Volantis to turn off the machine and resume the convergence. This eventually worked, and the unitologist leader Jacob Danik deactivated the machine, resuming the convergence, but not before Isaac Clarke completed the machine and sent the moon crashing down to Tal Volantis. However, this action awoke the other Brethren moons and set them on a course to Earth. 65 million years ago, the Earth black marker arrived via the asteroid which caused the extinction of the dinosaurs, leading to the rise of mankind. In 2214, a research team led by Michael Altman discovered the black marker and recovered it from a flooded crater off the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. After doing so, it began a necromorph infestation. Altman's mysterious death and his work with the black marker ironically made him a martyr and figurehead of a newly formed religion, the Church of Unitology. By 2311, using the research, the sovereign colonies wished to study and use the markers as a source of energy. They eventually built 3 red markers, which were located on the classified distant planets of Aspera, Crema, and Aegis 7. However, outbreaks commenced around the facilities, and after discovering what happened on Tal Volantis and the threat the markers posed to humanity, the research was shut down and their existence covered up, erasing any knowledge of the markers. By the 25th century, overpopulation and resource shortages forced humanity to go into deep space mining. In 2508, the CEC mining company rediscovered Aegis 7 as a planet rich in natural resources, and illegally entered the restricted Aegis system to mine it. The USG Ishimura, under the command of Captain Benjamin Mathias, was sent to Aegis 7 and soon unearthed the red marker, causing a necromorph infestation in the planetside colony, which then spread to the Ishimura itself. After the USG Kellyan crew arrived at the Ishimura, Isaac Clarke's objective began returning the marker to the planet in order to contain the necromorph Hivemind. However, it soon became apparent that he was being used by the red marker as it imprinted its blueprints in his brain. Isaac Clarke, along with Nolan Stross, was brought to Titan Station to revive the marker program, now run by EarthGov, creating the Site-12 marker. It resulted in another outbreak and the start of a convergence event, but Isaac and Ellie Langford stopped it. Unfortunately, the markers had spread to nearly every major colony due to EarthGov's replication program. Seeing this as a violation, a radical unitologist group known as the Circle began unleashing the markers among the colonies, spreading the Necromorphs to cause a universal convergence. After Isaac Clarke, Ellie Langford and John Carver uncovered Serrano's work on Tau Volantis, they completed the alien machine and killed the moon orbiting Tau Volantis. Ellie returned to Earth, believing Isaac and Carver died. However, they both survived, and their actions with the moon awoke all of its brothers, which came to Earth in order to consume all its biomass. Markers are very durable, and even if they are destroyed physically, the fragments will continue to emit the signal, but there are still ways to permanently destroy a marker. First, by battling and defeating its influence within a person's own mind. Isaac first demonstrated this with the Site-12 marker, and they can also be destroyed by an extremely high temperature, such as throwing it into a star or a ship's reactor. The resulting energy surge will obliterate the artifact entirely. All currently known markers include the Earth Black marker, Marker 1A on Cremar in the Proxima Centauri system, Marker 2A on Espera in the Gliese 581 system, Marker 3A on Aegis 7 in the Aegis system, the Site-12 marker on Titan, multiple red markers found in the Sprawl's government sector, a white marker is seen in one of Carrie Norton's hallucinations, the lunar marker on Earth's moon, Marker Shroud 4 on Uxor, 3 red markers on Ptolemy Station, 2 red markers in the cargo hold of the CMS Terra Nova, a red marker on the CMS Brusilov, a red marker found underneath the SCAF base in marker containment, and hundreds if not thousands of red markers seen on the surface of Tau Volantis created by the aliens. Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the video. Be sure to do me a favour and click the like button to help it grow, and let me know what your favourite thing about the Necromorphs is and why, and I will catch you all next time.